Let's talk some chess. This is an amazing game that was played in 1925 in Moscow. It's often referred to as the Mexican Immortal. Carlos Torre Repetto is playing with white pieces, and Emanuel Lasker, who we all know, playing with black pieces. I actually just recorded this, but the screen didn't record for some reason, so we're doing it again, and hopefully that means some sharper analysis for all of you. So Torre kicks us off with d4. We have knight to f6, knight to f3, e6, and bishop to g5, already pinning the knight and getting the bishop deep into the enemy position. c5 by Torre, challenging this pawn on d4, and Torre adds some support with e3, so supporting this pawn on d4. Lasker takes anyways, c takes on d4, e takes on d4, and now bishop to e7, breaking this pin, or at least covering the pin of the knight to the queen. We have knight to d2, knight b to d2 by Torre, connecting these two knights, and d6 by Lasker. Slow move, but sort of organizing his forces in the center of the board. c3 by Torre, adding support to d4, knight to d7, adding another defender to this knight on f6, bishop to d3, b6, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop, and now knight to c4 by Torre, and Lasker fianchettos the bishop. So both sides have developed all the pieces, all the minor pieces. There's only been one pawn exchanged. Both sides have a pretty nice light squared bishop that's controlling an important diagonal. So it will be interesting to see how both sides sort of fight for positioning and try to generate some sort of attack. So Torre starts off with queen to e2, getting the queen off the first rank. We have queen to c7 by Lasker, and now both sides just castle kingside, so all the kings are tucked away safely, and now it'll be a struggle for position. We have rook f2 e1 by Torre, doubling up on the e file, or at least not quite doubling, but putting the rook and the queen on the e file. Lasker responds with rook f2 e8, and we have now rook a to d1, so getting the rooks nice and strong in the center of the board. We have knight here to f8, and this is this will prove to be a useful move. I think Lasker senses some vulnerability in the h7 pawn. It's currently attacked by the bishop, and it is defended twice currently by both knights and the king. But this knight may fall, and it'll be nice to have an extra defender of this pawn if Torre starts to attack. And here Torre also actually retreats. He brings the bishop all the way back to c1. He wants to keep this bishop very safe, and it's looking like Lasker may want to move this knight away. Lasker just put the knight on f8 to keep an eye on this h7 pawn. So if the knight on f6 moves, then Torre doesn't want to trade bishops on g5. So tucks the bishop away, and indeed Lasker moves the knight to d5. Putting the knight on a better square, opening up this bishop, although he also sort of hems in his light squared bishop, but that's okay for now. And here Torre shows the other reason behind retreating his bishop. He wants his knight on g5, and now you can sort of see the plans unfolding. You have knight and bishop eyeing this h7 pawn. Again, that's why Lasker put the knight on f8. It's now properly defended by the king and the knight, but sort of a little bit of an attack going for Torre. We have b5. Lasker wants to kick away this knight, and Torre obliges with knight to a3 with an attack of his own on this b5 pawn, attacked twice, in fact, by the bishop and the knight. So the pawn pushes on to b4, and Torre takes, c takes on b4, knight takes on b4, and now the immediate queen to h5. And now as things are starting to heat up a bit, you have a queen, a knight, and a bishop all eyeing this h7 pawn, so you have to take one of them away, or multiple of them away. And that's what Lasker does. He first takes the knight on g5 with bishop, and Lasker takes back with the bishop on g5. So it proved a reasonable move to sort of protect his bishop on c1 before getting it back into the action. And now Lasker also removes the light squared bishop from d3, and Torre takes with the rook on d3. So now there's no more pressure really on the h7 pawn, and things have been nicely exchanged. Lasker's light squared bishop just has total control of this diagonal, but Torre has this nice rook lift, and this rook can swing into the action and add some pressure on the enemy king. So interesting to see how both players will proceed. First we have queen to a5 by Lasker, and this is a nice move because it of course threatens mate in 1 if Torre doesn't do anything. You know, you take the rook on e1, but it also pins the bishop to the queen, which is going to become important. So the bishop on g5 is now pinned to the queen. It can't move away. You know, if it moves, then queen takes queen, and everyone is very sad. It should be noted that Lasker's queen is undefended, but you know, there's no check here. If, you know, maybe if the queen was on, or the king was on a different square, then the bishop could move with check, and then Torre could pick up the queen, but not in this case. So Lasker is comfortable with his queen on a5. And here we have b4 by Torre, kind of wanting, first of all, stopping mate in 1, but also wanting to get the queen off of this this diagonal, or sorry, this rank. And it's an interesting move because I guess after you play b4, I haven't looked at this, but I guess knight to c2 is good because it both protects the rook and attacks the queen. But an interesting little sacrifice. But Lasker actually doesn't take him up on that. He just brings the queen all the way over to f5, maintaining the pin of this bishop. And here we have Torre bringing the rook over to g3, so now aligning the rook with the king. This is actually a better position for Lasker. It's a better position for black. You just have to be really precise about how you defend here. So white certainly has a lot of ammo around the enemy king, but you can defend this. And the proper move in this case is to play f6. So of course the bishop is pinned, the queen is pinning the bishop. What do we do with pinned pieces? Well, we want to attack them. So here if you played f6, then you would get knight to c4. The knight is threatening to come to d6 with a mega fork, so forking the queen, the rook, and the bishop. You can prevent this with rook to e7, getting the rook out of harm's way. And then after knight takes on d6, queen to d5, attacking the knight and protecting the bishop here. And then now it's difficult, you know, to find a move for white. If you retreat the knight, you lose the pawn on g5. Or sorry, the bishop on g5. So this defense works, and it works for another reason, which I will get into in a moment. Basically, this f6 move works. What doesn't work is what Lasker played. It was the first of a series of 3 mistakes that essentially just lost him the position. He plays h6. And this looks the same. It almost looks better because you're adding some more ammo in front of more obstacles in front of the queen on h5. But there's an issue here. And the issue is quickly exploited by Torre. He brings the knight to c4, again threatening this mega fork on d6. And here the same defense doesn't work. So if you play rook to e7, again, in both lines, the bishop can't take because then queen takes, of course. But after this rook to e7, then knight takes on d6. And now you don't have this queen to d5 move, which was the key move before, protecting the bishop, attacking the knight, because now you have bishop to f6 for white. And I'm not going to get too into this move because it's kind of the crucial move behind the main mechanic that we'll see in this game. But the idea here is what's different in this position is because Lasker moved the h pawn instead of the f pawn. In the last line, the pawn was on f7 and the rook was defending this g7 square. But now there's no one defending the g7 square, and this combination is going to be, the combination of the rook and the bishop will be deadly. So that's the difference between the two lines. So anyways, we get Torre moving the knight to c4, and now an interesting, what looks like a very good move is queen to d5 by Lasker. Threatens the knight, protects the pawn on d6, protects the bishop if that ever needs protecting, and also if the rook ever moves from g3, this will be insta checkmate. So the queen and the bishop will team up for checkmate on g2. But here this allows Torre to bring the knight, this really pesky knight, to e3, and now not only does this defend g2, that doesn't really matter, but it attacks the queen on d5. And now Lasker brings the queen to b5, so really trying to keep trying to keep this bishop pinned. But this is not going to help. And the reason this is not going to help is because Torre has a move which launches a really brilliant attack. So see if take a second and see if you can find the move here that kicks off sort of Torre's winning combination. Okay, so we kind of previewed this move earlier, but you are giving away your queen, but you're not moving your queen. It is bishop to f6. And this is an awesome move because you know, it just ignores the pin. The queen is now completely open. But of course, the big threat is that you're eyeing this g7 pawn with the rook and the bishop. And, you know, that's not all, but the white queen is also attacking the black queen, which is currently undefended. So Lasker really has no choice but to take the queen on h5. But now we enter the windmill. And if you haven't heard of windmills before, a really fun tactic. Hopefully, you know, when I first saw this game, the tactic really stuck in my head. I tried to recreate it in my own games. Just a really fun situation to be in, you know, when you're the attacking player, not when you're obviously the defending player. But Torre kicks it off with rook takes on g7. And now the king doesn't have a lot of options. In fact, the king only has one option. You can't take the rook because it's defended by the bishop. You can't move to h7, so the king has to move to h8. But now you get the idea behind the windmill. It's the rook just swinging around, clearing out space, and using the discover check of the bishop to keep the king just sort of running back and forth. So we have rook takes pawn on f7. Again, discover check from the bishop. King has nowhere to go but g8. King goes to g8. Rook comes back to g7, checking the king. King is forced back to h8. Rook swings all the way to take the bishop on b7. Again, discover check from white's bishop. The king only has one square, moves to g8. Rook back to g8, forcing the king back to h8. And now maybe the move you first saw in this position, rook to g5. Again, a discover check, and again, attacking the queen. You don't want to just a quick, you know, when I first saw this, I was like, why not take everything? Why not take the pawn on a7 and get another round in? You don't want to, you know, let's say that is what happens. So pawn, king moves back, rook moves back, king moves back, rook attacks the queen. In the endgame that the players are about to enter, you don't want this rook to just have unfettered access to the a file. You don't want to unleash this rook and allow any counterplay. So Torre leaves that pawn on the board to sort of keep this rook just locked in. So anyways, we get rook to g5 attacking the queen, and now the king can finally move away. Only has one choice, but the king moves to h7, and Torre takes the queen. So just a really nice, you know, let's do the combination again just so we can see it. You know, we have rook takes, king moves, rook, king, etc., back and forth. Just a really nice sort of visual combination, and obviously really helpless for Lasker, but really fun to attack with if you have this position. So rook takes queen, but now this is not like a insta win because Lasker has this king to g7 move. And the king now is forking the bishop and the rook, which is not a term you often say. And there's not much you can do about it. You can't save both of these. Both pieces are being attacked. It's a little bit awkward. They're kind of in a cramped position. So Torre, rightfully so, decides to protect the rook, moves the rook to h3, and king takes bishop on f6. And now we've reached the endgame, but it's pretty clear, or it should be pretty clear, that Torre has the advantage. He's up 2 pawns. Lasker's king is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and Torre's king is very well protected. And these pieces are much more active than Lasker's pieces. So Torre starts it off by adding to his pawn advantage with rook takes pawn on h6 with check. The king moves to g5, attacking the rook. Rook to h3, and now Lasker brings his e-rook to b8, attacking this b4 pawn. Before defending it, Torre gets a couple more kind of windmill checks in with rook to g3 check, king to f6, rook to f3 check, king back to g6, and now the rook is cutting the king off from the game. And now Torre just calmly plays a3, protecting this pawn on b4. And you can see it's a good thing that there is a black pawn on a7 because it's stopping the a1 rook, the a8 rook from taking this pawn. So here Lasker tries to break open the position somewhat, plays a5, Torre takes, rook takes, and now you have this really lovely knight to c4 move, protecting the pawn, attacking the rook, and attacking the d6 pawn as well. Lasker solves it by bringing the rook to d5. Now he's attacking the d4 pawn and protecting his own pawn. Torre defends the pawn with f4, and we have knight to d7, trying to get the knight into the game. But this allows rook to e6. Rook takes on e6 with check. Now Torre is up 4 pawns and has some very active rooks. And after king g5, and Torre protects the rook on g3 with g3. In this position, Lasker resigned because you're just completely losing here. You're down 4 pawns. These rooks are super active. The king is in a bad spot, and the game is over. So just a really fun game. I mean, obviously, not the most interesting end game, but the windmill mechanic is really fun and exciting to watch, and hopefully it stays with you. It definitely stayed with me. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, and we will see you next time.